Hey there, Cryptid family. If you enjoy the chills, don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you're new, and hit that notification bell if you're not afraid of the whispers. The world didn't end with nukes, zombies, or economic collapse. It ended with teeth, big ones. And we were the only ones dumb enough or paranoid enough to be ready for it. I stood on the watchtower, rifle braced against my shoulder, staring out at the endless black of the Colorado wilderness. The moon, fat and full, hung low in the sky, bathing the mountains in silver. If I didn't know any better, I'd say it was peaceful. But I did know better. I flicked on the night vision scope and scanned the tree line, still clear. No movement, no eyeshine, just the eerie silence of an unnatural night. Below me, the compound was alive with motion. The boys were busy, double-checking the fortifications, stacking ammo, reinforcing the gates. We'd spent years preparing for the collapse of civilization, stockpiling food, weapons, medical supplies. We expected to fend off looters, maybe a rogue government faction or two. Not this, not them. A voice crackled over my radio. Anything? I pressed the button. Not yet, but it's too quiet. Hank's deep sigh carried through the static. Gonna be a long night. No shit. We heard them before we saw them. The howls came in from the east, low, guttural things, vibrating through the air like some primal war cry. It wasn't the sound of wolves. It wasn't even the sound of anything that belonged in nature. It was hunger. The boys below went silent, guns cocked, blades were unsheathed, jokes and grumbles died in their throats. And then the tree line shifted. Shadows peeled away from the trees, dozens of them. They moved in unnerving unison, slipping between the branches like ghosts, tall, gaunt, too human, yet not human at all. Their eyes glowed like coals, their bodies twisted and jerked unnaturally, elongated limbs hanging too loosely at their sides. Then they ran. No, charged. I lined up my shot and squeezed the trigger. The first werewolf's head snapped back, a burst of black mist spraying from the exit wound. Its body crumpled mid-stride, flipping end over end before going still. The silence shattered. Gunfire erupted from the compound, a roaring wall of sound. The night lit up with muzzle flashes as the boys let loose, cutting through the pack before they reached the barricades. Silver-tipped rounds tore through flesh. Limbs exploded. Jaws snapped and howled in agony. It was glorious for about 30 seconds. Then they hit the fence. The impact rattled the entire compound. The chain link bent inward, metal shrieking as clawed hands tore at the barriers. Some tried climbing, digging their fingers into the mesh, launching themselves over. One of them made it. It landed right in the middle of the yard, crouched on all fours like some rabid, skinless thing. Its head snapped toward us, mouth splitting open to reveal a second row of jagged teeth, black saliva dripping from its maw. Billy was closest. He swung his shotgun up, too slow. The thing lunged, covering the distance in a blink. He screamed. I barely registered the sound before I took the shot. The bullet tore through its chest, but it didn't stop moving, not until Hank jammed a silver-coated machete through its skull from behind. Billy hit the ground, throat gushing like a broken hydrant, his body convulsed. He was still alive when the transformation started. His bones snapped, twisting under his skin. His hands curled into claws. His eyes turned that awful glowing yellow. His mouth opened in a silent scream, teeth elongating into fangs. And then Hank did what had to be done. He didn't hesitate. He put a bullet in Billy's skull and turned back to the fight like it was just another Tuesday. The rest of us, we didn't have time to mourn because the werewolves had broken through. The eastern barricade collapsed under their sheer weight. The floodgates were open, and the compound became a meat grinder. I dropped from the tower, rolling as I hit the dirt, then sprinted toward the armory. We had to regroup, had to push back before they overran the whole place. A blur of motion to my left. I turned just in time to see one of the bastards coming straight for me, too close for a rifle, too close to run. It tackled me to the ground, claws raking across my armor, hot breath washing over my face. My hands scrabbled for my knife, found it, drove it up. Silver met flesh. The werewolf spasmed, screeching as the metal burned into its ribs. I twisted the blade deeper, wrenching it sideways. Then, pop. The thing slumped on top of me, its body still twitching. I shoved it off and staggered to my feet. My radio crackled. Fall back. Get to the bunker. I didn't need to be told twice. The night was far from over, and we were just getting started. I hit the dirt running, boots kicking up dust as I sprinted for the armory. The air reeked of blood, gunpowder, and wet fur. Behind me, the compound was dissolving into chaos. The eastern barricade was gone, ripped apart like tinfoil. The floodlights cast frantic shadows across the carnage, jagged outlines of men and monsters locked in a vicious, flesh-ripping melee. Hank's voice barked through my radio. Fall back to the bunker. Easier said than done. The werewolves were everywhere now, climbing the walls, tearing through the wreckage, learning. They weren't mindless beasts. They weren't just running headfirst into bullets anymore. They were adapting, and we were running out of time. I reached the armory, shoulder-checking the metal door open. Inside, the last of our survivors were already scrambling for supplies. Hank stood in the center of the room, his face set in grim determination as he popped open an ammo crate. His hands were steady, even as the screams outside grew louder. "We're down 4, he said. "No time for grief. Just the numbers." "How many of them?" I asked. He shoved a fresh clip into his rifle. "Too goddamn many." I scanned the room. The remaining Slayers were already gearing up, checking magazines, swapping out standard rounds for silver-coated bullets. Someone was melting old coins in a cast-iron pot, pouring molten silver into shotgun shell molds. Improvised death. Beautiful. Hank handed me a belt of silver-jacketed .308 rounds. "They're learning, changing tactics." I nodded, yanking the belt over my shoulder. "So do we." One of the guys, Mick, a big bastard with a fondness for explosives, chucked a canister onto the table. "Silver nitrate gas bomb," he said with a grin. "Made it last month when I was bored." Hank arched an eyebrow. "And now you tell us?" "Figured we'd never need it." I grabbed the bomb, tossing it into my pack. "We need it." The ground shook. A dull, rhythmic thud echoed through the armory. A beat, a war drum. Then the howls came again. The floodlights flickered. Something was on the roof, multiple somethings. Heavy bodies, shifting weight, claws scraping against metal. They weren't charging blindly anymore. They were circling, testing us. Then the ceiling collapsed. A werewolf dropped into the armory, landing right on top of Mick. The force caved his chest in instantly. A wet crunch, a spray of blood, and Mick was gone, just gone. The thing lifted its head, jaws dripping red. Then everything exploded into motion. I drew my pistol and emptied the mag into its face. The silver rounds tore through flesh, popping one of its glowing eyes, but the bastard still lunged. Hank swung his machete. The silver-coated blade sank deep into its throat. The werewolf choked, gurgled, then kept moving. No hesitation, no pause. These things didn't die easy. It took 3 more rounds, one straight to the skull, before it finally stopped twitching. The roof shuddered again. More werewolves, more weight. Hank spat. They're trying to drop the whole damn building on us. We need to move, now. We blew the back door, spilling into the night like rats escaping a sinking ship. The floodlights were failing, casting flickering strobes across the compound. And then I saw them. Dozens, no, hundreds. They weren't just attacking anymore. They were waiting. Their glowing eyes burned through the dark, surrounding us, hunched and ready. Claws clicked against stone. Breath steamed in the cold air. It was an ambush, a coordinated one. The bastards had let us run, let us think we were escaping. And now they were closing in. Fall back, Hank said. We ran. The bunker was 50 yards ahead. 30, 20. The pack surged forward. I saw one of our guys, Joey, I think, get pulled down. He didn't scream. The wolves tore him apart too fast for that. I threw the silver nitrate bomb over my shoulder. A second later, boom! A cloud of shimmering silver gas erupted, swallowing the werewolves whole. Howls of agony filled the air as their lungs burned. It bought us 5 seconds. Just enough. We hit the bunker doors. Hank punched in the code. The metal hissed as it unlocked, grinding open just wide enough for us to squeeze through. The last Slayer inside hit the switch. The doors slammed shut. The werewolves hit the metal. Claws screeched against reinforced steel. They slammed against it again and again. But this door wasn't a flimsy chain-link fence. This was a goddamn vault. We were safe, for now. I sucked in a breath, staring at the survivors. There weren't many of us left, maybe 10, maybe less. Hank wiped blood off his face. We're outnumbered. No shit, I muttered. He looked me dead in the eyes. And we're not getting out of here alive unless we make the next move count. I already knew what he meant. We weren't just going to wait. We were going to fight back. The bunker was deathly silent. Not the kind of silence that felt safe, the kind that listened back. Outside, the werewolves were still there, pacing, breathing, waiting. Every so often, one of them would throw itself against the steel door, testing our defenses. The impact sent a dull boom reverberating through the room. No matter how reinforced this place was, we all knew the truth. It wouldn't hold forever. I sat against the wall, reloading my rifle with the last of my silver rounds. Across from me, Hank was sketching something into the dirt-covered floor. Our next move. We don't get out of this unless we turn this place into a goddamn kill zone. His voice was steady, but I could see the exhaustion creeping in. We'd lost more than half our people, and the rest of us weren't exactly fresh. I looked at the others. Barely a dozen left, all hardened survivalists, all bloodied, battered, and holding on to their last shreds of adrenaline. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. They knew what had to be done. We weren't going to survive the night. We were going to end it. The bunker wasn't designed for a final stand, but we could make it one. We set to work turning the entrance into a goddamn meat grinder. Explosives. Mick might have been dead, but his stockpile wasn't. We wired what was left of his silver shrapnel mines along the tunnel leading to the exit. Choke points. There was only one way in, And that was a mistake on their part. We stacked sandbags, turned old metal lockers into barricades, anything to funnel them into the slaughter. UV lights. Someone found a few industrial-strength UV floodlights in storage. Silver burned them, sure, but so did concentrated light. We rigged them to a tripwire. The silver solution, we had one more ace, liquid silver, a whole drum of it, meant for casting bullets. If we could get them into the tunnel, we could flood them in molten death. By the time we were done, the bunker looked like something out of a nightmare. Traps, barricades, death waiting at every corner. I checked my rifle. Not much ammo left. Not that it mattered. This wasn't about shooting anymore. This was the last push. The next time the werewolves hit the door, they didn't stop. Boom! Metal groaned. Boom! A deep dent caved inward. Boom! The hinges snapped. The door went flying, and they poured in. I don't know how many there were. Dozens, maybe more. Clawing, snarling, laughing. The first few tripped the explosives. Silver shrapnel tore them to pieces. Chunks of fur and flesh splattered the walls, but that didn't stop the rest. They charged into the kill box, funneled down the tunnel, piling over the bodies of the fallen. Hank pulled the tripwire. The UV floodlights blazed to life. The werewolves screamed. Their skin blistered, boiled, peeled away in sheets. Some of them staggered back, blind and shrieking, crashing into the ones behind them. And that was when we opened fire. The tunnel turned into a slaughterhouse. Silver rounds punched through bodies, leaving smoking holes. Heads popped like rotten fruit. Jaws shattered. Limbs were blown clean off. They kept coming. One lunged over the barricade. I caught its throat with my knife, twisting deep until its eyes went blank. Another one tore into the guy beside me, ripping his spine out like a fucking prize. Blood flooded the floor. The smell of burnt flesh choked the air. The pack wasn't retreating. They were throwing themselves at us with reckless fury, which meant one thing. They knew this was the end, and they didn't care. We were losing ground. Hank was down, shot through the leg. Another Slayer got torn in half. My knife was buried in a werewolf skull, and my rifle was empty. Time for Plan B. I kicked over the drum. Liquid silver flooded the tunnel. The werewolves shrieked. It melted their skin, filled their lungs, turned them into screaming, bubbling mounds of flesh and fur. The ones still alive panicked. They turned on each other, scrambling, trying to claw their way out. Too late. The tunnel was a mass grave. Bodies, bones, ashes. And then silence. Nothing but the sizzle of molten silver eating through the dead. I slumped against the barricade, barely breathing. The bunker was destroyed. The team, 5 of us left. Hank groaned, spitting blood onto the floor. That it? I listened. No howls, no claws scraping against metal. I let out a ragged laugh. Yeah, it was over. But not really. The radio crackled. A voice, faint, distant, but clear. Survivors, we need help. Under attack. Denver. The 5 of us locked eyes. Hank wiped his face, sighing. Well, shit. We weren't done. Not yet. I reloaded my gun, cracking my neck. Let's go kill some more fucking werewolves.